So hey and I'm fans. The series name is What If Ndo Married Yasaka? So let's start the series. Ndo had arrived at last, and despite his pulse pounding from the near capture he had gone through, he had managed to get the village's sacred scroll and was now only awaiting the arrival of his teacher to become a genin. The young Uzumaki hummed thoughtfully as he turned to face the village. He had escaped virtually unscathed, even though he had to employ low-cost but strangely successful tactics against his GGA, third headmaster. But who would have imagined that the kind elderly man the village looked up to for wisdom and direction was a major pervert? However, since Mizuki wasn't anticipated to arrive for a while, he didn't feel like trashing his good fortune. He placed the scroll in front of him and looked at it with interest, wondering why this particular scroll was so important. He opened it out of curiosity and took a look. The first thing he saw was a spirit art technique that super ninjas could use, a clone technique. He wanted to pull out his hair, but he couldn't help but pout because he failed at it, which is why he was taking this makeup test. When he looked more closely, however, he found that this cloning technique required a lot of core energy and produced solid clones, unlike the Academy's method. The energy that Super Ninja used in everyone was a life force that one could not exist without. He was also amazed that it only required a single hand seal, which was the crossed fingers in an addition symbol. In order to test it, he focused, mimicked the hand seal drawing, and whispered, "Shadow clone spirit art," while conjuring up his enormous core energy. No didn't think it would work, so he kept his eyes closed when he heard a popping sound. He also whispered instead of announcing the spirit art. He opened one eye to see a perfect copy of himself sitting across from him, and then he opened both eyes fully to check how his copy looked. His bright blue eyes with a hint of violet, his spiky sun-kissed blonde hair, his 3 whisker birth markings on each cheek, his worn-out bright orange pants that were quite large and held together by a rope, his equally orange jacket with blue on the shoulders and a thick white collar, and the swole tassel that the old man headmaster had given him when he first started the academy, were all visible on the copy's face. He said, "This is unbelievable, it really did work." "Yup, looks like it, boss," the clone remarked, grabbing the original to show how stable it was. "That was very easy," it said. "But why did this clone technique work so easily, but I can't perform the academy one?" As the clone shrugged, "I don't have the slightest clue." When No looked up, he saw what seemed to be a huge hole in the sky as something fell towards him. The original and clone's confused expressions were replaced with ones of shock, concern, and a slight flush. No was about to continue talking to his clone when they both suddenly felt strange. XXXXXXXXXX. The Yaokai capital of Japan and the seat of the Western Yaokai faction, Kyoto, was ruled by Yasaka, the daughter of Tamamo, an ancient kitsune created by Amaterasu. She came to power about 64 years ago after gaining the authority required to uphold the ley lines, a powerful spiritual force that pervaded the entire city. Yasaka wondered why she had been prepared for the role of leader, even though she knew it was because she was a nine-tailed fox, the rarest breed of kitsune, a fox yaokai, the ultimate pinnacle of all yaokai. However, she never wanted this position or to be stuck in the city forever, so she bit her tongue and hoped that someone stupid would take her place. Don't get her wrong, she loved the people of Kyoto, both the yaokai and the humans, but everyone treated her like a prize, which is another reason she hated being stuck in the city. Worst of all, her mother left Kyoto as soon as she was appointed leader, and she hasn't been seen since. The young woman in her early 20s, dressed in traditional shrine maiden attire, sat in front of a gorgeous koi pond outside a large ancient Japanese-style palace. She had a voluptuous figure, long blonde hair, and matching eyes. Her delicate facial features and round, short eyebrows, which are a sign of nobility, were held back by a traditional hair ornament. As Yasaka looked into the crystal-clear pool of water and saw the various koi fish swimming alongside each other, she thought to herself, "I wish there was something more out there for me, as I really don't want to be stuck here for the rest of my existence." She could also see the moon's reflection in the water. Yasaka then reached into her Maiko's sleeve and removed a pure black gem, which she held almost playfully between her fingers, before squeezing it tightly. She remembered that Amaterasu had warned her about the gem's ability to transport anything it was thrown at into another dimension, and she had contemplated using it on herself multiple times, because she was fed up with the elders' constant complaints about her taking a mate. They would constantly present her with arrogant, wealthy, and incredibly cruel yaokai of different races, such as Inugami, Monkey Yaokai, and Karasu Tengu. As she crushed the gem in her palm and threw it to the ground, Yasaka asked herself, "If I leave, what will happen to the city? I'm sure they can find someone to take my place. I'm sorry Haharu and you as well Amaterasu-sama, but this just isn't for me. I hope you can find it in yourself to forgive me," she said. When the remnants of the gem exploded right beneath Yasaka, she was engulfed in swirls of black flames. The swirls became stronger until they formed a maelstrom, and when it cleared, she was gone. By the time the other yaokai and Shinto priests arrived, it was too late. Yasaka was gone. "Yasaka-sama." She's gone. How could we have let this happen? We must inform Amaterasu-sama at once. There is no doubt that the Western Yokai faction was in disarray following the death of its commander. Before she knew it, she was being flung through a whirlwind of colors and lights that nearly blinded her, but the pull of the space kept her from fighting. As she approached, a dazzling light grew larger and larger until she had to close her eyes because it completely engulfed her. She felt her body falling freely as she hurried to the ground after the light went out. This wasn't the first time she had fallen from a great height. She was able to survive things that normal humans couldn't because of her kitsune ancestry, so falling from a couple of thousand feet in the air wouldn't kill her, but it would hurt like hell. However, something worried her because she was falling toward two small shapes, and as she got closer, she noticed that they were two identical-looking blonde-haired boys. "Get out of the way!" Yasaka cried at the two boys, but it was too late because she was moving too fast and crushed one of them. XXXXX. Although the clone couldn't help but be in awe of the woman's beauty, no normal human should be this beautiful, but the ears and tails were a dead giveaway that she wasn't human. He could only assume that the original No was still alive when this gorgeous blonde woman landed on his original. If he had died, he would have immediately dispelled him. The woman blinked a few more times before answering. "My name is Yasaka." She frowned and said, "I'm sorry, I think I might have killed your sibling." Her voice was filled with nothing but sorrow, demonstrating how sincere she was. Who are you, miss?" the clone asked as the woman's eyes opened quickly and she looked at the clone. "Man, lady, were you trying to crush me?" No groaned as he stood up straight, and Yasaka gave him a sheepish look. "Please forgive me, young man, I did not mean to land on you. I did tell you to get out of the way, but you chose to ignore my words," Yasaka said, quickly pushing herself away from No before giving him. "She's got you there, boss," the clone remarked sarcastically. "Whose side are you on?" No shouted at his clone, who only protruded his tongue at his original. "I don't understand why you keep calling your brother boss," replied Yasaka, cocking her head to the side. As Yasaka looked closely at him and saw that he was full of core energy but completely human, No exclaimed excitedly, "Oh, he's not my brother, he's just a clone of me. I used this really cool spirit art called Shadow Clone Spirit Art." Since she didn't know where she was, she decided to ask him a question. "You wouldn't happen to know where we are currently, young man?" Yasaka asked politely, but No gave her a look that made her appear completely insane. Yasaka seemed to be deep in thought as No said, "Well, we're currently in the Elemental Nations, more specifically the Land of Fire, and we're currently in the village known as Hyde Ninja Village," before he asked whether she could have forgotten since she had hit her head upon landing. "It seems the gem worked, but now I'm in a strange land and quite possibly a different world altogether," Yasaka thought, deciding to pretend she was traveling. But before she could think up a story, the blonde-haired boy in front of her was staring at her with a look of awe and horror. Yes, I am. Is that a problem?" she questioned gently as No shook his head. "Hey lady, you're a nine-tailed fox," No murmured shakily, realizing that she had forgotten to conceal her ears and tails. "No, it's just my home was attacked by a nine-tailed fox 13 years ago," No said nervously as Yasaka stared at him in shock. But then she sensed a dense evil presence coming from No's stomach area, which felt similar to her own, but much stronger and eviler. "Don't tell me someone sealed," Yasaka thought, but then she thought again. What was this young man doing out here alone? "What are you doing out here all by yourself, young man?" Yasaka asked No, who was becoming annoyed at being called a young man. As No shouted, "My name is No, got it, lady?" Yasaka slapped him in the head with one of her tails and said, "Well, No, it's not polite to yell at a lady, and my name is Yasaka, not lady. Now, will you please tell me why you're out here all by yourself? Your parents must be worried sick about you." After only 5 minutes of meeting Yasaka, No paused, wondering why he felt so comfortable around her. "You see, I'm out here doing a makeup test in order to become an official super ninja, and all I had to do was steal the sacred scroll and learn a single spirit art from it, and Mizuki said he was gonna meet me out here," No said nonchalantly as Yasaka's eyes narrowed. Since Yasaka was concentrating solely on No, she thought that someone must have set him up and deceived him into taking the scroll. "I've never heard of a makeup test like this before, this doesn't sound right," she said. "No-kun, I think you were set up by whoever told you this," said Yasaka solemnly as No tilted his head sideways in confusion. "What do you mean I was set up? Mizuki-sensei would never do anything like that to me," asked No, who was obviously confused. "Things just don't add up and it's too convenient. This Mizuki person is taking advantage of you and most likely wants that scroll for himself, so he used you to get it. I do not know why he would choose you, but from what I can tell he's most likely either going to kidnap you or kill you once he gets the scroll," Yasaka said, shaking her head in response to No's expression of despair and dread. No was terrified, a sensation he was all too acquainted with. He was wondering why this shit always happens to him. Why would he be continuously mistreated, ignored, and exploited for personal gain? Why is he being treated this way? What has he done wrong? What do I do? Ndo thought he was going to cry, but then a pair of soft hands clasped his whiskered cheeks, and Yasaka knelt next to him and smiled warmly. You're going to return the scroll to its original location and explain to your leader or master what really happened, and if it makes you feel any better, I'll go with you, Ndo-kun, Yasaka said. Ndo gave her a disbelieving look before tears welled up in his eyes, but they were joyful ones, as he had finally met someone who accepted him for who he truly was. He couldn't resist giving Yasaka a large, foxy grin, which caused the gorgeous vixen to return the smile. XXXXXXXXXX. That's quite the story you told me, Ndo-kun. Do you know why Mizuki would do this? Asked Ndo, shaking his head despite the fact that he had never seen Yasaka before. Nevertheless, he appeared to have a big influence on his surrogate grandson. Ndo shrank under his gaze and murmured, "No, I don't." Even though the academy teacher didn't intend to do it, Iruka seems to have crushed Ndo's dreams once more. He understood that he couldn't hold Ndo accountable because the boy simply had too much core energy for his own good to perform academy-level spirit art, and the requirements for academy graduation would actually need to be changed. Very well, Ndo-kun, I'll see to it that you are given the rank of genin for learning a Jounin-level ninspirit art, but you are not to tell anyone about this incident, are we clear? Said Ndo, nodding as he turned to face Yasaka, who had been sitting quietly on the couch off to the side. Very well, Ndo-kun, you're free to go, although I want to talk to your friend here for a little bit, he said, appearing as though he had considered objecting but changed his mind. So, who are you exactly, miss? My name is Yasaka, and it's a pleasure to meet you, Headmaster Sama, but as you can tell I'm not from around here, she said, rising from the couch and revealing her kitsune features. The elderly man in front of her, who seemed to be a kind and fair man, looked at her incredulously before narrowing his eyes. What are you? Are you related to the nine-tailed fox that attacked us? He asked, releasing his killer intent. No, I am not. The fox that most likely attacked you was a Yoko, who are known to be very cruel and vicious, and have a strong hatred for humans. On the other hand, am a kitsune, a benevolent being. We will not cause harm to humans unless given probable cause. I mean you and no one in this village any harm, Yasaka said, shaking her head. I'll take your word for it for now, but if you show any sign of being a rabid beast, we will seal you away, he said gravely, looking at Yasaka as she nodded and said, I wouldn't dream of it, though there's something I wish to ask you. And what might that be? Yasaka raised an eyebrow and scowled at the old man. The fox you speak of, the Yoko, it's sealed inside of Ndo, isn't it? He inquired, astonished to hear this, but unable to resist letting out a sigh and massaging his forehead. Yes, it is, but I must ask you not to tell Ndo-kun about it, Yasaka said before slamming her fist into his desk, causing a huge crack that startled the elderly man. Are you crazy? Have you seen what those people you call villagers are doing out there? They openly curse him, calling him a demon, and I can only imagine what else they're planning to do to him when he's alone. He obviously doesn't know why they're doing that, so I ask you why haven't you told him? Yasaka said without raising her voice. The creases on his forehead were as clear as day, showing how old he truly was. I wanted to give him a childhood that he could enjoy and, he murmured, moving away from the stunning woman in front of him. And what? Obviously, that failed. I can clearly see the psychological damage done to him. If you don't tell him soon I will. It's better that way because eventually if he does find out later and it could cause him to defect from this village, believe me, I know what happens when you keep secrets away from people. It can cause a shift in someone's personality and completely change who they are as a person. He's such of a pure-hearted child. But he could become a cold-blooded monster if left in the dark for too long, Yasaka said in a rather firm tone. Had never really given that much thought and felt that merely instilling the idea of becoming headmaster would be enough to keep Ndo from going insane. There's so much that I've kept from him as I thought I was keeping him safe. Perhaps you're right, he said with a sorrowful expression in his eyes. I have a suggestion though, said Yasaka. Yasaka raised an eyebrow at the fox woman in front of him and asked, and what might that be? She licked her lips, and her tails began to sway back and forth a little faster. I'll keep Ndo from falling into that endless pit of despair. Allow me to care for him. He's such a pure-hearted boy, and I would hate to see him turn. Plus, he will be quite the looker when he gets older, Yasaka said with a smile. Minato, what would you do if you were still alive? He asked, feeling jealous of Ndo for the first time in his life. XXXX. He was one step closer to becoming headmaster, but he wasn't happy as he walked down the main street of Hyde Ninja Village. It was almost bittersweet because he felt that he didn't truly deserve the rank of genin. Rather, he didn't want it in the first place. If he couldn't earn it through his own blood, sweat, tears, and hard work, he didn't want it. But he wasn't about to deny it either. He would just have to work even harder to prove himself deserving of the title. He ignored the looks and conversations from the villagers and Super Ninja, and his usual wide smile turned into a frown. His mind began to wander to Mizuki, his academy teacher. What had he done that was so terrible that his teacher hated him so much, and why would he do that to him? Did Iruka treat him with the same level of hostility? I found you, Ndo. Iruka was surprised by Ndo's lack of response, as he seemed more focused on his thoughts. What is it, Iruka-sensei? Because I'm really not in the mood, so whatever you want to scold me about, do it now, Ndo said in a tone that sounded almost emotionless. Ndo turned around idly and saw Iruka staring at him with a look of disappointment and anger on his face. When Iruka found out what had happened to Ndo, she was appalled. Ndo, do you know how much trouble you're in right now? Iruka said, trying to talk as quietly as possible without anyone noticing. Before turning to leave Iruka, Ndo said harshly, and for the record, Sensei, this wouldn't have happened if you would have helped me with the clone technique, but no, you're just like everyone else in this village. If you're talking about the scroll, I already returned it to Gigi. I found out that Mizuki-sensei set me up. He told me to take the scroll and meet him in the woods. Luckily for me, a friend was able to show me that Mizuki had ulterior motives, Ndo said lightly before turning to leave Iruka. No, Iruka thought to himself as he saw Ndo disappear into the distance, his mouth wide open like a fish struggling to breathe after leaving the water. Despite being the one who caused this, he couldn't help but feel guilty about it. XXXX. A young man wearing the typical Hyde Ninja Village nin attire, which included a flak jacket and a bandana for forehead protection, had green eyes and wide shoulder-length hair with a hint of blue. Where the hell is that brat? He said, leaning against the tiny hut with his arms folded across his chest and his foot tapping the floor. Lightly. Mizuki questioned himself, wondering if Ndo had been apprehended. His plan was perfect. He would persuade Ndo to steal the scroll of sealing using his silver tongue, then meet him outside to murder him, grab the scroll, and present it to Orochimaru. You will come with us. Failure to do so will result in your death, the man in the dragon mask said impassively. Mizuki, you are charged with treason, the voice behind the Chunin said. Mizuki spun around and grabbed one of his large shurikens off his back when he noticed several Anbu with their swords ready. The deceitful academy teacher was arrested with his hands raised in surrender, saying, I'll get you back for this, you damn demon brat! Mizuki pondered, didn't the brat tell on him? He will not prevail in this combat. The odds were not in his favor. 1 Chunin versus 7 Anbu! Mizuki mentally cursed Ndo. XXXX. Ndo went to the door of his flat and unlocked it with his key. Upon entering, he noticed Yasaka sitting at his little crude table. Yasaka? Gigi? Why have you all come here? Ndo asked bewilderedly. She sounded very old and tired as she said, Ndo-kun, come sit with us. We have a lot to talk about. Yasaka, however, remained silent and gestured for Ndo to sit, while her tails were swaying gently from side to side. Ndo felt uncomfortable as he sat down in front of them both and asked, Am I still in trouble about the scroll? Nodded. No, Mizuki has been taken into custody and is currently in the interrogation unit, but that's not what I'm here to tell you about. I'm about to tell you something I should have told you a long time ago. I honestly thought I was doing this for your own protection, but Yasaka-san has opened my eyes and showed me that the only thing I was doing was pushing you towards the edge, stated with Ndo's eyes widening. What are you trying to say by pushing me over the edge? The elderly man shuddered as Yasaka decided to speak up. What Sama is trying to say is that he's going to tell you why the village hates you so much, and about your parents, isn't that right? Yasaka said, his eyes wide and seemingly ready to explode. Hey, wait a damn minute. You mentioned that you didn't know my parents, right? Ndo shouted as he rose from his chair and gestured at. When Ndo's eyes widened even more, he responded, I did what I thought was best for you, Ndo-kun. I'm not asking for forgiveness. All I ask is that you don't take out your anger on the village, take it out on me instead, he said, noting the venom and rage in Ndo's eyes. After pausing to inhale deeply, Ndo asked, What do you mean? I'll confess that when I was younger, I considered destroying this hamlet, but why do the peasants despise me so much? Inquiring rather than insisting, Ndo. The truth of the matter is Ndo-kun, our fourth headmaster, Minato Namikaze did not kill the nine-tailed fox. You see, a tailed beast is a creature which was born from nothingness. It's completely comprised of core energy, meaning it cannot be truly killed. The only way to stop a tailed beast is to seal it away, and usually they're sealed inside of humans who are known as Jinchuriki or power of human sacrifice, stated with Ndo's eyes widening. The fox is it imprisoned within me? No, you are not the fox, you are Ndo Uzumaki, a victim of the Yoko inside you. You should be seen as a hero for not only holding back the beast within you, but also saving everyone in this village from its wrath, Yasaka interrupted, putting her hand on Ndo's shoulder. But humans have a difficult time letting go of the past and looking past their own hatred and fear, so you serve as a painful reminder of the events of that night, Yasaka said. So why would I be selected by the fourth headmaster? No, before you read this, please understand that Minato didn't have a choice in the matter, was said as a vanilla folder was handed to him. Ndo accepted the folder and opened it, and when he saw what was within, everything stopped. "Impossible, I'm there," he cried. Observed Ndo intently while the young Uzumaki stayed still, saying, "But I must ask you, Ndo-kun, what are you going to do now that you know this question mark?" The son of Kishin Uzumaki, the red-hot habanero, and Minato Namikaze, the fourth headmaster. "You are also the sole heir to the Uzumaki clan, but I must tell you, both your mother and father loved you unconditionally, and your father asked for you to be seen as a hero," he explained, rousing curiosity about Ndo's next move. Ndo clenched his fists and said, "Well, if you think I'm going to get revenge against the village, I'm not. It's too much trouble, and I'm not one to hold grudges, but I won't become headmaster to a village that can't see the sacrifice my father made or honor his dying wishes. What will I do?" Before he laughed quietly, he asked gently. As he replied, bewildered, "Didn't you just say you wouldn't bear a grudge?" Yasaka nodded in agreement. "True, I will not hold grudges against the villagers, but I'm done trying to gain their approval. If they want to fear me, then let them. I'm not going to waste my time trying to make them see who I truly am," Ndo said when he got back to his seat. "Did his parents ever have a house of their own?" Turning to face Ndo, Yasaka remarked, "Don't worry about it, Yasaka, although it would be nice to stay somewhere better than this," adding, "because I believe it would be a far better place to live than this crummy little apartment. No offense, Ndo-kun." After a moment's reflection, he exhaled and said, "I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but your parents' home was destroyed in the Ninth L's attack. However, there is a large shrine on the edge of Hyde Ninja Village, and being the Uzumaki heir, it now belongs to you, Ndo, and if you want to you can move there, and it has enough space to house 10 people. You're much too young to be living alone, so it's wonderful that I'm going with you, Ndo-kun. I'm sure you wouldn't mind if I stayed with you, would you?" Yasaka smiled and clapped her hands together. The young Uzumaki shuddered as the vixen's once warm gaze turned slightly predatory, staring at Ndo for a minute like a piece of meat. "I suppose it couldn't be any worse than my apartment?" Before nodding in agreement with the proposition, Ndo stated. Then he thought about his late wife, Biwako, third headmaster, and he felt bad if he ever fell in love again, because he would feel like he was betraying her. Sure, I don't mind." Ndo laughed uneasily as he scratched the back of his head and criticized himself in his mind, wishing he was still at his best. "Very well, I'll see to it that your things will be moved into the Uzumaki shrine," he remarked as he departed Ndo's apartment. He then rose from his chair and said, "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go see the results of Mizuki's interrogation." Since the elderly man was one of the few people in this village who had ever shown him kindness, he was unable to hate him despite his anger. This reminded him that he would have to go find Aruka later and apologize to him for his previous behavior. Ndo stood there, tears pouring from his eyes as all of this new information finally hit him like a ton of bricks. The older Kitsune woman standing next to him was grinning at him, and her warm, kind eyes made him feel at ease. Her huge bust made him feel hot inside, but her swaying tails had a hypnotic effect on him. As Ndo was wiping the tears from his eyes, he felt something move over his shoulder and turned to see one of Yasaka's large bushy tails resting on his shoulder. "No, please be gentle, my tails are very sensitive," Yasaka remarked, blushing a little as he ran his fingers through her big bushy tail. Ndo reached up and gently grasped hold of her tail, which was incredibly soft and had thick warm fur. Yasaka remarked, "There is no need for any of that, Ndo-kun," pulling her tail away from Ndo. The little Uzumaki was in awe of her tail's capacity to swell. "Sorry, I didn't know!" With a humorous bow, Ndo addressed Yasaka, who chuckled at his behavior. After glancing at the clock, Ndo exclaimed, "It's almost midnight!" "Although I believe it's time to retire, it's rather late, and we have a big day tomorrow, Ndo-kun," Yasaka said, virtually crying as he nodded. "You can take my bed, Yasaka, I'll sleep on the floor," Yasaka said, tilting her head to the side. "There won't be any need for any of that since you'll be sleeping with me from now on," she murmured, nearly choking on Ndo's spit. What? Now there will be none of that, you be fine, plus you're far too young for us to do any of the perverted things floating around in your head, although when you reach the right age, I wouldn't mind," Yasaka said, laughing as Ndo's cheeks flushed in response. Yasaka's tail swiftly encircled Ndo's hands, preventing him from creating hand seals, and she began guiding them to Ndo's bedroom. "Now let's get some sleep," Yasaka said, as her tail advanced at a speed that was much quicker than any Genin or Chunin could respond. Drip. Drip drop. After what seemed like a few minutes but was really only 30 seconds, Ndo arrived at a large room with a giant cage that had long thick vertical bars and a small piece of paper with the kanji for seal on the middle of the cage. He woke up in what looked like a sewer, with pipes in every wall and an ankle-deep pool of water on the floor. He wandered through endless hallways, wondering where in the world he was, until he came to a long, dark hallway, and for some reason he felt the need to walk down it. The young Uzumaki was looking about the cage when he noticed a large, seemingly living form in the back. The room echoed with the demon's loud voice. Well, see who we have here!" Ndo looked at the cage and saw two large red eyes staring at him. Yes, indeed it's the fake me Tilda. Ndo tried to speak as calmly as he could despite his fear when he saw the same beast that had attacked his house. However, he also noticed a figure standing directly in front of the cage that looked exactly like him, save for the fact that his doppelganger had red eyes and black sclera. Wearing his idiot mask was useless in this situation because the nine-tailed fox most likely knew everything about him. You have to be the nine-tails, right? But since I suppose this isn't a social call, I'm sure there's a reason you summoned me here. If it's not too much to ask, why is there a clone of myself? The nine-tails pointed to the doppelganger, also known as Dark Ndo, and said, "This here is your darker half." He claims to be the real you, but that's far from the truth, disregarding the doppelganger's protests. You know all of the negative emotions you suppressed over the years, he's the result, and there's a reason why I did call you here, and he's part of the reason, the fox said. This is all pretty perplexing, Ndo said, turning to his doppelganger, who only gave him a blank stare. So, you're saying he's my other half? That is just nonsensical exclamation point question mark quote Ndo cried with confusion. You should be in charge, not you, as you are really the weaker light half, and I am the powerful dark half. Speak for yourself, fool. With a gloomy smile, the doppelganger said, now all we have to do is get you to burn this village down to the ground, noting that all you do is act like an idiot, but you managed to impress me slightly when you gave up your dream of becoming headmaster. Looking at his darker side, Ndo said, I will never do that, no matter how horrible our lives has been. The only thing revenge will do is make us feel worthless. Furthermore, just because I don't want to be headmaster doesn't mean I'll stop training. Instead, I'll get so strong that Super Ninja and the villagers won't want to disturb me ever again. The two Ndos were silenced by the fox's roar. The fox sighed with relief and turned to face the original Ndo, saying, okay, brat, the reason I summoned you here is because you're humiliating me. Dark Ndo looked down in despair as the fox said harshly, you represent me as my Jinchuriki, so I will be merging both you and your dark half together so that you will become sharper, stronger, faster, and smarter because the current you is an embarrassment to all Jinchuriki everywhere. Hey, hold for a second, can't we discuss this first? Yes, I agree with my weaker and far less intelligent half. We didn't agree to this. With a threatening smile, the fox said, I don't remember making a deal with you. To me you're nothing more than that brat standing in front of me, just a slightly more intelligent and stronger version, but this way things may work out better for all of us, before raising his massive paws/hands and performing a ram hand seal. Ooh. What fuck comrade? A slightly taller and slightly more muscular Ndo emerged from the violet shroud, looking more confused than anything else. Both his dark and light halves began to glow brightly as they changed into two glowing humanoid shapes, which slammed together to form a dense violet-colored humanoid shape. Ndo clenched his fists a few times and thought aloud, so, this is who we originally were, but that wasn't the only difference he noticed. Perhaps the most important was that his core energy control had greatly improved. He probably gained a few other things from this union, but he wasn't aware of them yet. How does being entire again feel? Then question mark quoted feels good, doesn't it? The fox inquired, jolting Ndo out of his reverie. To have access to your full potential, but don't allow this small gain in strength fool you. You're still far from becoming the strongest person in the town, including your current headmaster and that vixen Yasaka, even if you just have half of my power. I take it you want something in return for what you just did to me? Ndo asked, and the fox nodded. Quote after observing that the animal was different. Indeed, there is. I want my other half back. He is currently being held in the death god's stomach, and the master of the Shinigami is in the very Uzumaki shrine that you'll be moving into later today. You don't have to get it back to me right away, but consider doing it soon, the fox replied. Ndo found himself nodding toward the 1,000-year-old fox in front of him, unsure of how to react. But I have one question for you, he added. Is it possible for me to save your other half from the death god without dying? The fox appeared to suffer at his loud ranting. Ndo virtually screamed, but the fox merely raised an eyebrow in response. The fox said, first of all, stop yelling, it hurts my ears. After pausing to make sure Ndo was paying attention. Second exclamation point as Ndo went green at the idea of having to sacrifice someone, the fox clarified, once you have possession of the mask the death god can't harm you in any way, shape or form, all you need to do is find someone to sacrifice to free the contents of its stomach. When Ndo said, couldn't I just use a shadow clone instead? The fox only shrugged his shoulders as though it didn't care or didn't know the answer. Quote this made Ndo's eye twitch in frustration, but he knew there was no point in arguing with what might be the most powerful being in the world, even if it was trapped in his stomach. Then, because something was bothering him, Ndo stopped in his tracks and asked, is Ninetales your actual name, or is it just a designation? Sure, I have a name, but I'm not going to tell you or anyone for that matter. You haven't earned the right to know my name, but I'll tell you what, if you manage to impress me, I might consider telling you. Now be gone, the fox said as Ndo was expelled from his mindscape. The Ninetales felt a small spark of respect beginning to form for its current Jinchuriki host as a result. Hey, he might be my favorite Jinchuriki host so far. He's already better than Mito and Kishina by leaps and bounds. Now let's see how far you can go, Ndo Uzumaki, the fox said, reclining and closing his eyes. XXXX tilde, X tilde XXXX. The young Uzumaki's eyes opened just enough to release a torrent of rage at whoever had woken him up. When his eyes finally focused, he recognized the person who had woken him up, and a slight flush appeared on his cheeks at the beautiful woman in front of him. Ndo was startled awake and let out a little moan of annoyance. As Ndo's eye twitched, the attractive blonde vixen responded in a light-hearted manner. "Well, good morning, sleepyhead," she said in a very gentle, affectionate voice. "I was afraid I was going to have to fill a cup up with water and dump it on you," she joked. Her outer cloak and hair ornament were off, but she was still dressed as a shrine maiden. In fact, she had changed her appearance in a way that immediately attracted his attention, cutting her hair into a bob that extended past her shoulders. "Yasaka, you cut your hair!" Yasaka's face seemed to lighten at his observation, and Ndo sobbed. Yasaka didn't take offense when Ndo said, "But not to be rude, but I liked your old hairstyle as well," acknowledging that she liked her previous hairstyle, but that it was tough to maintain because it gets uncomfortable when your hair is longer than your own height. "I'll keep that in mind, Ndo-kun. It's time to get up. I made you some breakfast, and after you've eaten and got washed up we'll be going to see Sama," Yasaka stated as she walked out of Ndo's small bedroom. She left the young Uzumaki alone so he could get ready. "I understand that you want to fantasize about your future partner, but I believe it's time you prepare. The sooner you enter the Uzumaki shrine, the sooner you can regain your other half," the nine-tailed fox said from inside Ndo's mindscape, causing the young Uzumaki to jump. "Nine tails?" Ndo winced at the ferocity of the fox's response, which was sarcastic. "Don't yell out loud, you stupid idiot," the fox remarked. "The last thing we need is for the vixen or, worse, the old headmaster, to discover that I'm in contact with you. So, for the time being, talk to me thoughtfully so that people don't think you're even more insane than you already are." "Hey, you big jerk, I'm not ignorant or insane!" Quote when the fox roared in amusement at the pitiful insult Ndo had hurled at it. Ndo retaliated. A time later, Yasaka came back to Ndo's room with a slightly concerned expression. "Ndo-kun, are you okay? Did I hear you shout nine tails? Are you okay? What happened to you?" Since Ndo was unsure of what to do, Yasaka questioned, will he truly tell a lie to Yasaka and his Jiji, or will he simply betray the tailed beast inside of him? When Ndo didn't answer, Yasaka placed her palm on his skull, using one of the numerous techniques Amaterasu had taught her, before she rose to the position of leader of Kyoto's Yakai faction. "Kit, stop her before it's too late!" It was too late when the fox shouted. XXXX tilde, X tilde XXXX. The fox was more powerful than Susanoo, and it nearly equaled the power of Tsukiyomi, the second strongest Shinto deity after Izanami, and the Kotomatsukami. Yasaka was standing in ankle-deep water in a strange place, with a massive cage in front of her and Ndo standing beside her, looking shocked. When she looked up, her eyes widened and she saw two large red predatory eyes staring at her. As the fox growled at Ndo, who flinched, Yasaka gazed at the imprisoned beast before her. "Look what you accomplished, you useless brat." "Don't call him useless, you vile mangy beast," said Yasaka in response, causing Ndo to smile slightly as the fox's eyes expanded before dangerously narrowing. Yasaka remarked, "I understand how your kind operates, Yoko. You all despise people and are driven to wreak havoc. You don't give a damn about anything or anyone." Yasaka was on her hands and knees, panting, when Ndo's mindscape was filled with an unfathomable amount of bloodlust and killer intent before she could even finish her verbal attack. "You have some nerve saying that to me, you useless vixen." Ndo collapsed to the ground, barely able to raise his head. "Neither of you knows anything about me," the fox growled, its eyes blazing red with power, "and don't think that I'm one of those weak yokos. I'm a tailed beast, a creature made entirely of core energy. I'm not like you. I wasn't born naturally, and my only purpose was to lead humans to a better future. Those dirty hellish apes only saw me and my siblings as weapons." "I won't let you use No," Yasaka began to say, but the fox cut her off. "You assume that I want to control him, don't you?" the fox clarified coldly. "I see no point in trying to control him. What would I gain from it?" Yasaka agreed, causing the beast to laugh in amusement. "Nothing at all. If they all discover that I'm controlling his body, they would kill him. If he dies, I would naturally change after 10 or 2 years, but I don't want to go through that," the fox continued. "Then what do you want?" asked Yasaka. However, without replying, the fox simply lay down and closed his eyes, saying, "You will find out soon enough. Oh, and one more thing, don't tell that old headmaster about anything that happened here, otherwise, it may cause more trouble for the brat and me. Now be gone both of you." The fox gave Ndo and Yasaka the order to exit the mindscape. As the fox grumbled, HMPH. The fox chuckled and remarked, she's definitely got fire in her. I can respect that, before nodding off. Perhaps when I get my other half back, I may give her a little present, the fox said. XXXX tilde, X tilde XXXX. When they got back to the young Uzumaki's little rundown flat, Yasaka and Ndo said, Ndo-kun, how are you? Yasaka inquired anxiously as she grabbed him by the shoulders. Ndo nodded and turned to face her, stating that he had never had so much authority in his life. It was somewhat painful for the newly promoted genin. I understand, Ndo, I won't tell a soul until you're ready, Yasaka replied quietly before observing that Ndo's head was buried in her big bosom and that his arms were flailing. She immediately released the young Uzumaki, who fell to the ground as he was struggling to breathe. Ndo screamed, damn it, Yasaka, don't do that. As his cheeks flushed. Your enormous breasts have the potential to kill me! Don't get him wrong, Ndo loves the way Yasaka's huge bosom feels firm, warm, and soft. Yasaka saw this and gave the young Uzumaki a sly smile that made him quiver. Really? Ndo asked before he realized what he had just said. After chuckling, Yasaka took both of his hands and immediately covered his mouth with his palm while groaning in embarrassment. There's no need to be embarrassed, Ndo-kun, I don't mind since you're not one of those twisted perverts who were hell-bent on knocking me up just so that they could have me birth them a powerful offspring, said Yasaka with a growl. Why would anyone want to do that to Yasaka? She was such a nice fox lady, right? Ndo frowned. Though only wearing a t-shirt and boxers, Ndo stood up with a burning determination in his eyes. I won't allow anyone like that to lay a hand on you, Yasaka, that's a promise, and Ndo Uzumaki never backs on his word, Ndo said proudly in a strong voice as Yasaka stared at him in awe. Her shocked expression turned into a warm smile as she kissed him on the forehead, surprising the young Uzumaki. Thank you, Ndo-kun, Yasaka said with a smile, while Ndo was irately scratching the back of his head. XXXX tilde, X tilde XXXX. Sitting calmly behind his desk and looking at Yasaka and Ndo in front of him, he said, I do have some good news for you, Ndo-kun. It seems Mizuki was attempting to steal the scroll of sealing, and he was using you as a way to get it, and we have Yasaka to thank for its safe return. Ndo had observed that Yasaka had indeed cut her hair, and he had complimented her on it, to which she thanked him. Well, that certainly is good news, isn't it, Ndo-kun, said Yasaka with a smile. Now, I believe you said that there was a shrine that would fall under Ndo's possession. Ndo nodded silently, hurt that one of his teachers had exploited him for their own gain, but also aware of how dangerous the super ninja world was and that he would need to adapt quickly to survive. In what location is it? Yasaka inquired. Ah, yes, he replied, reaching into his desk and pulling out a small map. Placing his finger on the map's bottom, he showed the southeast border of Hyde Ninja Village. The Uzumaki Shrine is quite a ways from the headmaster mansion as well as the academy, but since not many people live out there, you won't have to worry about people bothering you, he said, as he handed Yasaka 2 keys from his desk. He gave her 3 sets of keys, and Yasaka notes that he felt as though he was missing something. There's a key for both of you as well as a spare one in case something happens, just remember no one has lived there for quite a while, so it will need a little sprucing up, he said, neglecting to mention the Shinigami masks and the numerous scrolls of Ninspirit and Funspirit art that were locked inside the Uzumaki Shrine's walls. Even though it was painful to hear that Ndo no longer wanted to be headmaster, he was happy that Ndo remained committed to Hyde Ninja Village, which meant that his grandson Hyde Ninja Villagimaru might succeed him. Thanks, Gigi, Ndo remarked with a wide, foxy smile as he couldn't help but smile at the youngster. Yasaka bowed to the elderly Kage after saying, we truly appreciate this Sama, but he simply waved it off and grinned at her. The blonde couple then left the office, leaving him alone as he reached into the drawer, pulled out a familiar orange book, and laughed twistedly, oh tilde, Maiko-chan you naughty girl tilde. XXXX tilde, X tilde XXXX. Let's go in, Ndo-kun, she said, gently pushing the young Uzumaki as he obeyed and followed her into the shrine. Yasaka and Ndo stood in front of the large Uzumaki shrine, and Ndo looked at it in wonder. Yasaka nodded her head, finding the shrine to her liking, reminding her of many of the shrines back in Kyoto, while also making her feel freer here. Come along, Ndo, I don't want to lose you in here, Yasaka said amusedly as Ndo moaned under his breath, causing one of Yasaka's tails to slap him in the head. The interior of the shrine was completely covered in dust and cobwebs, and it was very dark. Yasaka raised her hand as an orb of ghostly blue flames flickered to life, and Ndo couldn't help but be amazed by the flames, because they seemed to be burning hotter than any flame he had ever seen. As they made their way to the shrine, Yasaka lit a number of lamps with her fox fire. The blue flames helped Ndo see better by illuminating the darkness and chasing away the shadows. Man, this place is dark and dusty, he said. I know, Ndo, but nothing a little spring cleaning won't fix, especially with your shadow clones. Will be able to get this done hopefully today, Yasaka said, grinning at him as she heard his complaints. His eyes widened before he gave a whoop of delight. If you help me clean, I'll see if I can teach you something later today, Yasaka added. One of the many drawbacks of being a supernatural being with increased longevity was that she would unavoidably outlive Ndo whether she liked it or not. He's such a pure-hearted child, I really wish he would stay that way, but in this world, I don't think it would be possible. Nevertheless, I will cherish these moments for the rest of my existence, Yasaka thought as she laughed at Ndo's excitement. Since her own father was human and died shortly after she turned 9, Yasaka would need to find out if there was a way to extend a human's life in this world, especially if she was going to have kids with Ndo. When that happened, her mother became extremely resentful, which set off a downward spiral that ultimately led her to leave Kyoto and travel to the elemental nations. Yasaka's golden eyes met Ndo's blue ones, and Ndo murmured, "Oi," with concern. "Are you okay?" Yasaka ? Her eyes had a sad look for a moment, but then they became considerably warmer. Yasaka's phony cheerful reply, "Yes, is there a problem?" Ndo-kun ? Caused Ndo to frown and give her a troubled look. "Don't concern yourself with little old me, I'll tell you one day, just not now. We have more pressing matters to deal with anyways," said Yasaka, as though she didn't want to discuss whatever was bothering her. Ndo ended the conversation to avoid upsetting her further, and her eyes lost their warmth, and her smile dimmed. It didn't seem like a mindless, cold-blooded monster as everyone claimed it was. Rather, it seemed to be a fairly intelligent creature that could teach him a lot if they could become more friendly. "Remember, brat, you need to find the Shinigami mask," the tailed beast sealed within Ndo called out, mentally nodding that he was going to help the Nine Tails, because he genuinely wanted to learn more about the fox. In order to wait for Yasaka, who was using him as a body pillow, to go to sleep, Ndo used a combination of the shadow clone and replacement technique while he was walking through the shrine at midnight. He then switched places with his clone, who seemed to like the feel of Yasaka's gifted bosom. The young Uzumaki put down the lantern and raised the plank when he noticed a ladder leading down to another floor beneath the shrine. Ndo had been searching the entire shrine for what felt like hours without finding anything that looked like a mask. He was holding one of the lanterns that Yasaka had previously lit with fox fire, but he stopped when he stepped on a rather squeaky floorboard that seemed to shift under his weight. Ndo entered a vast room with masks and scrolls as he made his way to the bottom level of the shrine. Ignoring the scrolls, Ndo went to the wall of masks and exclaimed, "Brat, look at that mask in the center, that's the one." "Seize it!" Ndo reached out to grab one of the masks, but the fox grumbled and said, "No, not that one, the one above it, you fool." Ndo felt a chill go down his spine when he held the mask in his hands, because he could sense a huge presence emanating from it. Then, Ndo summoned another shadow clone and asked him to put it on. "Put it on," Ndo said quietly and softly, and the clone did so without saying anything. The clone began to scream in agony as a thick, powerful white aura surrounded him, and the entire area was filled with a sense of death and dread. A translucent, gaunt specter with a demonic face floated immediately behind his clone. It was much larger than a human, with purple skin, long shaggy white hair, 2 red horns protruding from it, and a large tand in its mouth. The Shinigami was wearing a large white kimono and carrying a set of prayer beads. And what emerged from his clone would be ingrained in Ndo's memories for the rest of his life. "Why have you called me mortal?" the Shinigami growled. "I have a lot on my plate." The spectral entity hovering behind his clone was all that Ndo could see, and its ghoulish appearance was enough to frighten him to his core. When the death god's cold, heartless eyes locked onto the young blonde, Ndo felt his very soul freeze over at the predatory gaze of the spirit/deity. This had better be good, or else your torture and punishment will be legendary and remembered for millennia to come. Oh no, the voice of the death gods, if you can call it that, was cold, menacing, and full of eldritch power that made Ndo and the tailed beast inside of him shiver every time it made noise. The Shinigami's voice was a horrible parody of any creature he had ever spoken to before, and even though the Nine-Tails' voice was demonic, at least it didn't frighten him this much. "Talk like a mortal. I'm getting impatient." As the death god glared at him, Ndo flinched, fearing a panic attack, but it was worse than that. At last, he found the courage to say, "1 that s, so, rule of my father Minato Namikaze, nd the other half of the Nine-Tails back please," as his sanity was being undermined every time the Shinigami spoke to him. "Is that your desire?" The spectral entity asked after closely examining Ndo before its eyes widened. The Shinigami then reached up and removed the tanto from his mouth, exposing dark-colored fangs. The spectral entity looked at Ndo and said, "So, you're that fool's son? Why should I even think about returning his soul to you? He did, in fact, enter into a contract with me, and until you have something valuable to trade, the other half of Fox Beast is off the table." The Shinigami virtually yelled, "Oi," as he seemed amused by Ndo's response. "My dad is not a fool, please. Furthermore, who the devil is Fox Beast? Hey, goddammit, stop laughing at me." You're quite amusing boy, I'll tell you that much. Fox Beast is the name of the fox sealed inside of you. Before Ndo could even come up with a reply, a familiar feminine voice yelled out to him. What are you doing, Ndo Uzumaki? When he noticed the spectral ghoul lurking behind one of Ndo's clones, Yasaka shrieked in horror. Ndo glanced at her and cringed at the anxious, frightened, and irate expression on her face. Uzumaki, the Shinigami hissed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Uzumaki, did you just say that? Since only Uzumaki are insane enough to call me forth, it was obvious that it was one of them! The death god grumbled and then turned to Yasaka, saying, girl, you look familiar. What's your name? After examining her for a while, he inquired. My name is Yasaka, she said, pausing briefly to closely inspect the Shinigami's face as its eyes widened. And I'm the daughter of Tamamo and Kensei Hashigaru, she concluded as the spectral entity dropped his arms by his side and stared at Yasaka incredulously, despite her uncertainty about how to respond to the spectral entity. Is that really you, Yasaka? Incredulously, the Shinigami said, why are you here, Yasaka? You ought to be in Kyoto with Amaterasu and your mother. No remained silent since he was curious as to how the same force that divided the fox beast in two and took his father's soul was aware of Yasaka's identity. Yasaka truly yelled at the top of her lungs for the first time, saying to Ndo, enough with your games, just tell me who you are! The death god sighed. This could not be avoided. The Shinigami said, Yasaka, this is not going to be easy for you to hear. I'm your father, Kensei Hashigaru, as his form began to change from a large ghoulish spectral entity to a more human-sized spectral entity. The man in question was a handsome young man in his early to mid-30s, with dirty blonde hair and brown eyes. Yasaka's eyes widened as they began to cry, confirming that this was indeed her father, whom she had missed a lot. But how? No sought to comfort Yasaka as she broke down in tears and fought to speak, but the death god, or rather, Kensei, was already there, holding his daughter carefully and humming a gentle tune that seemed to Ndo like a lullaby. Tell me why you're here, Yasaka, Kensei murmured quietly. His voice had become inviting and warm instead of menacing and sinister. As recollections of her long-suppressed past flared up, Yasaka began, I'm here, because, pausing, after you died mother, I feel nothing but sorrow, despair, and anger coming from her. Ndo, the fox beast said to Ndo through their mental link as Ndo nodded, realizing that he had no place in this conversation. Whatever happened in her past must have hurt her. I suggest remaining quiet and don't get involved, the fox advised. What? Tamamo did what? Kensei inquired, not happy with the course things were going in. She got really resentful and accused me of killing you! And when I became the proper age to take her place in Kyoto she left, and I haven't seen her in almost 50 years. Lady Amaterasu barely checked in on me. The only Shinto gods who ever spent time with me was Inari and Susanoo, Yasaka finally said, wiping away her tears. She stopped being the loving, caring mother I knew and would take out her frustrations on me. She would always berate me, and whenever she would train me, she said, her body trembling and her eyes red and puffy. Kensei's previously anxious face became irritated as he massaged Yasaka's back. Why would she do that? How could she hold you responsible for my demise? That doesn't seem like Tamamo at all. He spoke aloud, we'll speak with her and Amaterasu when we get back. It wasn't your fault that the old Satan faction almost kidnapped you. Yasaka hissed, no, I don't want to go back. Kyoto is nothing more than a prison to me. That's the reason why I came here. I couldn't take it anymore, her father said, winced. You do know the Shinto gods will eventually find out that you're here. After all, this realm was created through peace treaty in between the Hindu and Shinto gods as well as the Buddha. They have unlimited access to this realm, and if Amaterasu comes here, I won't be able to protect you, Kensei said to his kid. I just don't want to see you get hurt. Although Yasaka was happy to see her father again, she was also curious as to why Ndo would bring out a death god. Now, would you mind telling me why you would summon a death god of all beings? Yasaka nodded, knowing that it would happen, but not worrying about it just yet. She turned back to the child Uzumaki, who shrank from her gaze, and asked in a horribly sweet voice. Kensei turned to Ndo and said, he wants the soul of his father and the other half of the nine-tailed fox inside him back. Under normal circumstances, I would either take his soul in exchange or something equally as valuable, but since you have taken a liking to this boy, I'll make an exception this time. Listen here, boy, listen well. If you ever make my daughter cry or hurt her in any way, shape, or form, I will make sure that your soul is shredded down to its last particle. Am I understood? He nodded rapidly and gently. When Kensei said, this is your father's soul, along with the other half of Fox Beast, don't make me regret this, he spat forth a massive sphere of ghostly blue flames with a dark crimson ball in the center. Ndo shouted, I won't Kensei Hashigaru, and bowed before the death god in front of him. The death god gave a nod before turning back to his daughter. Kensei said, I'm sorry, my daughter, but I must go. If you intend to stay in this realm, I cannot remain here for too long. I'll visit when I can, and remember I'll always love you no matter what. Just as his body began to crumble and fade into wisps of ghostly white flames, Yasaka walked over to the Shinigami mask, grabbed it up, and cradled it in her bosom as Nendo's clone, who had been wearing it, exploded into a cloud of smoke as it dropped to the ground. I'll miss you, father, she said sadly before turning to glare at Nendo. Now Nendo, you have a lot of explaining to do, and if you dare lie, I will punish you accordingly, she said harshly. The fox beast growled at being thrown under the bus, but he couldn't blame Nendo, especially given the fierce expression Yasaka was wearing. Nendo gulped as he told her everything that the Nine-Tails or fox beast had instructed him to do. I see, Yasaka said, snapping her fingers as Nendo's body was enveloped in shining golden light. I'm glad you were honest with me, but you should have told me from the beginning. We were lucky that the Shinigami you summoned happened to be my father. Well, I might as well move your father's soul as well as the other half of Lord Fox Beast into you, she said, before stroking her hair. Yasaka began to chant as Nendo felt the soul of his father and the other half of Fox Beast being slowly drawn into him. It wasn't painful, just a very strange and unsettling feeling. Looks like I'm going to have to restrain you while we sleep, Yasaka said as her tail tightened around Nendo's body, making sure to pin his arms to his sides. After the process was complete, Nendo passed out. XXXX. Bright blue eyes jerked wide as a tall, well-built young man with two bangs framing his face and spiky blonde hair, dressed in a full-body blue suit and the customary Jounin flat jacket, a white cape with red flames, and the kanji for fourth headmaster, said, where am I? The suddenly awake Minato didn't ask anyone specifically. It seems we're no longer sealed in the Shinigami's stomach, but rather in your own son, the demonic voice of Fox Beast cried as Minato turned to see a dark brown Fox Beast crouching on his haunches. As Nendo remained there staring at his father and breathing like a fish, the bright orange Fox Beast shouted, indeed, it's been quite a while, other half, from inside the cage in which he was imprisoned. Dad! Nendo yelled as he hurried over to his father. Minato gasped in shock as he buried his fist deep in his father's stomach, hunching forward with a pained expression on his face. Why did you do that? Why did you imprison the fox beast within me? Do you realize how difficult it has been? Holding his father close and burying his face in his vest, he remarked, I was expelled from the orphanage when I was 4 years old and had been living on the streets for over a month previously. Minato scowled when he noticed the anguish in his son's eyes and said softly, no, as No withdrew his face from his father's vest and fixed him with his gaze. How old are you? Minato inquired, resisting the want to recoil, but he couldn't help but look at him sorrowfully. He could feel his son's physical and psychological harm, and it deeply wounded him. I'm 12, I'm going to be 13 in a few months, Ndo said, wiping away his tears. Minato's eyes opened in shock at how much time had passed, and he began to feel bad about missing so much of his son's life. He sighed as he loosened his fists. Almost 13, man, I must be the worst father in the world, Minato muttered to himself, but Ndo and the two fox animals could plainly hear him. No, you're wrong, Minato, Yin Fox Beast said in his deep demonic voice, before turning his attention to his other half's Jinchuriki. Don't blame yourself for Kushina's death. It's not your fault, it's that masked man's fault. If it weren't for him, none of this would have happened, but things happen for a reason. The fact that your son undid the Reaper Death Seal and managed to get not only me. As much as I hated Kushina, my other half is right, the Yang Fox Beast smiled. You sealed me inside of your son to use as a force to take down that masked bastard, and I believe it's about time me and my other half reunite with one another. If your brat is truly going to master my power, he might as well master it as a whole and not half, and in order to do that, you're going to have to remove this cage for us to fully bond, the brightly colored fox sighed. No, how exactly did you undo the Reaper Death Seal? Minato inquired, puzzled as he turned to face his son again. No scratched the back of his head sheepishly as he informed his father everything that had transpired, from his taking the sealing scroll to Yasaka entering the world to him arriving at the Uzumaki shrine and learning the truth. Minato said, well, that certainly is a lot to take in, before passing his son and arriving at the cage. He frowned because he didn't want to open it, but both of the Nine Tails, or rather Fox Beast, were correct. In order for Ndo to use their power, they would need to bond with him, just like Killer Bee the Eight Tails Jinchuriki did. No, stand before me and lift your shirt, Minato ordered, or, as Kushina would put it, headmaster mode. Minato felt his fingers glow blue as he knelt down and pressed them against his son's stomach as the 8 trigrams seal swelled open and the seal tag on the cage began to burn away as the cage doors flew open and Yang Fox Beast moved over to his other half as the two combined to form a much larger Fox Beast, about 3 times bigger. No walked ahead of his father and lifted his shirt. Ah, that's much better, the fox said, stretching his limbs. Alright, brat, starting tomorrow night we will practice using my core energy in here, and I think it will be best if your father stayed here for a while, so he can teach you a thing or two, the fox said before lying down and closing his eyes. Are you really going to stay, Dad? Ndo said, hoping his father would at least stay for a little while, so he could get to know him. Sure, son, I owe you that much, Minato said as he gave his son another hug before Ndo left the mindscape, despite the fact that there was no way he could make up for all the pain he had gone through. Although I would like to meet this Yasaka person, she sounds very nice, plus, I need to lay down some ground rules with her, Minato said before wandering over to Fox Beast, leaning against him, and closing his eyes. XXXXXXXXXX. It had been 6 days since Yasaka and Ndo had gotten back together, and although it was amazing to see his father transform into himself from one of his shadow clones, Yasaka was shocked. Nevertheless, she vented to Minato, who took the verbal abuse she directed at him. He warned her not to do anything offensive to his son, or he would find a way to put her in a cell. Not only did Ndo master the tree and water walking exercises during those 6 days, but he also began learning magic from Yasaka, which was like pulling teeth for Ndo. Eventually, though, he managed to create a magic circle that enabled him to use magic, and with Fox Beast, he was able to use a small amount of the fox's core energy without the power overwhelming his body. Nevertheless, even though Fox Beast was eliminating the hatred and malevolent intent from his core energy, Ndo was still unable to make full use of it. Ndo was both excited and nervous as he got ready to go back to the academy for team placement. He hoped that the person on his team would be someone he could get along with, especially since his father had emphasized the importance of teamwork. He also hoped that he wouldn't be put on a team with Sakura or a friend of his. It was surprising to learn that Ndo wasn't a big fan of Sakura and had only asked her out because he needed attention. Fortunately, with Fox Beast his father and Yasaka, he no longer had to search for the pinnet. Ndo was standing in front of a full-length mirror, wearing black pants, a loose-fitting black and orange kimono shirt with long billowing sleeves tied by a thick gold and yellow Ono stylized belt, black fingerless gloves, and black calf-length Super Ninja sandals. He was also adjusting his Hyde Ninja Village forehead protector, which he had tied around his head. You look really nice in your new outfit, Ndo-kun, said Yasaka as Ndo turned to greet her, but stopped when he noticed that she was also dressed differently. Yasaka was wearing a golden sleeveless blouse with horizontal lines that looked like a kimono, tied with a red obi around her waist and closed quite low, exposing her sizable cleavage. She was also wearing tight black pants and high-heeled open-toed strappy black sandals. Where did Yasaka and Ndo get the money to buy new clothes for themselves? It was simple. Minato told them where he kept most of his money. The funny thing is that, much to Kushina's dismay, Minato was paranoid and refused to deposit his money in a bank. Instead, he sealed a sizable sum of money into several sealing scrolls that he buried deep in different locations throughout Hyde Ninja Village. Since he was a soul and had no use for the money, he didn't care if Yasaka and Ndo used it. Ndo said, blushing a little, "Ah wow." Yasaka smiled back at him after he said, "You look really pretty." "Why thank you no-kun, just to let you know breakfast is on the table. I want to make sure you eat before you head off to the academy," Yasaka said, leaning forward and kissing Ndo on the forehead. This made Ndo anxious as he felt his blood rush to his cheeks. He froze when he heard Minato's groan of dismay and Fox Beast's perverted laughter. "Come on brat, man up and kiss her and grab a hold of those big jugs of hers. She already said she would let you play with them if you impressed her." Nough, continued the sick Fox Beast, and Ndo could see the twisted fox's brow twitching. Enough of the Fox Beast. Yasaka previously stated that she was merely making fun of him. She was going to wait till he was 16 years old! Minato yelled at the fox. "It appears that my suspicions were correct. You are attempting to corrupt my son. However, it appears that I was mistaken about the kind of corruption you intended to use. I had assumed that you would want to manipulate him by inciting hatred, but now I see that you are attempting to transform him into a pervert!" Minato cried out. The beast with the strongest tail screamed, "HMPH. And why should we care that he is a pervert? It's fantastic to be a pervert." Minato retorted as the fox growled back, "No, it's not. Living evidence of it is my foolish sensei Jiraiya. Particularly with that twisted shit he refers to as a book." Fox Beast responded, "How dare you refer to that divine literature in such a way?" Minato was silent, but by this point Ndo had stopped listening to his father. "Luckily for me, even though I was locked inside Kushina, I managed to leak out a tiny bit of my power and transform into a human, and I soon rose to the top of Lord Jiraiya's clientele." XXXX. Ndo arrived at the academy quickly after leaving the Uzumaki shrine. He went into the classroom without saying anything and noticed that everyone was waiting for Iruka. This seemed to turn him off a little, and he wanted to find out whose team he would be on and maybe meet his sensei before going back home and training further. "Ndo, why are you here?" Ndo turned to the voice he knew to be Shikamaru and asked. "You see, Lord Headmaster became frustrated with me constantly failing year after year, so he decided to check my core energy levels, and lo and behold, I have too much core energy for my own good, so he taught me a high-level clone technique, and I was able to perform it with ease, so he gave me the rank of Genin," Ndo said, staring at the lethargic Nara with pineapple-shaped skull. Just as Ndo was ready to take a seat in the rear of the classroom, a very annoying voice shouted, "NRDO Barker!" After staring at him for a while, Shikamaru sighed and muttered something grating before putting his head back on the desk. Sakura gave Ndo a frustrated and irritated stare, exclaiming, "What the hell are you doing here? This is for your graduation, Barker's people. Don't believe that a glance will alter someone's opinion of you!" So, do us all a favor and leave, you useless Barker! Ndo murmured, then looked in the direction of the incredibly obnoxious voice. "If it weren't for the fact that I was stuck in the sea Laura Soul, I would ensure that girl could never become a super ninja," the girl said to his beloved son, and the fourth headmaster snarled softly at the annoying pink-haired girl he used to chase after just for attention. He also heard his father growl in anger at the girl's words. "Let me tell you something. I never liked you in the first place, and the only reason I chased after you was because I was desperate for attention. If you keep up your antagonism, I'll injure you. Do you get the idea? You're a pink-haired bitch who is useless and flatter than a 10-year-old boy. The normally blonde hyperactive knucklehead," Ndo remarked softly, which was unusual for him. What he did next, however, startled everyone in the room, including Shikamaru and his companion. Sakura was so frightened that she could only nod her head. When she didn't respond, Ndo dropped her to the ground and left the classroom. Ino went to see how her best friend was doing, but she would live despite how scared she was by Ndo's threat. The entire class fell silent when they learned that Ndo's intense crush on Sakura was solely motivated by his loneliness and need for attention. The students never thought that Ndo would ever threaten Sakura, and the only exception was a girl with dark blue hair who seemed to have a glimmer of hope that she might finally tell the blonde how she felt. The shy girl didn't know that Ndo had already set his sights on another girl, a much older and more mature woman. It was commonly believed that no friend was cold-hearted, emo and power-hungry, and to some extent, that was true. However, no friend was more afraid to let someone in because he was afraid of losing any friends or loved ones he made, because his older brother had left him mentally scarred. He looked at Ndo with a curious expression, asking what had changed so drastically in the blonde dope. The classroom door opened at this point, revealing the scarred Chunin. Haruka grinned at his classmates, but he noticed that they were unusually quiet. The headmaster had already informed him that Ndo had been promoted to genin, but he had expected to see him up front instead of behind. He turned to face Ndo, who appeared more calm and collected. He then heard Ndo say, "And for the record, sensei, this wouldn't have happened if you would have helped me with the clone technique, but no, you're just like everyone else in this village," and flinched. "As you all know, from today on, you're all Super Ninja of Hyde Ninja Village," Haruka began, seated behind his desk. "For now, you're genin, the lowest ranking ninjas, but as long as you gain experience, you soon rise through the rankings in no time, so, for now, we're going to divide you into 3-man teams, and then you'll meet your Jounin sensei," he said, over the murmurs of hoping to be with a friend or be with one they like, which caused him to sigh. They should be more concerned about survival than they are about something as trivial as that, Haruka thought as he took out the list the headmaster had just given him. "I'm going to be calling out your teams and I would like you to sit accordingly to them after I'm finished. Also, these teams were made and created by the headmaster himself, so you have no say in the matter of these team placements," he said to the students, who all fell silent to listen to the team pairings. Since the first 6 were all civilians, Haruka knew that most of them wouldn't pass the real test, but he understood that it was a sort of rite of passage. "Team 1, he said when he noticed that everyone had gone completely silent. "Next one is Team 7, they will consist of Ndo Uzumaki," he said, instantly grabbing the blonde's attention, who was observing his sensei with interest. Haruka said, "Ndo friend Uchiha," after stealthily glancing at his favorite blonde. When Ndo heard that, his entire body twitched. He turned to face the Uchiha, who was indeed looking at him curiously. Ndo put his head on the desk, hoping that the third member of his team wouldn't be as bad as the Uchiha. The many fangirls of his could be heard whispering and mumbling. Haruka quickly concluded, "And the final member is Sakura Haruno, and your sensei is 6th Headmaster Hatake," after glancing at Ndo's actions out of the corner of his eye and frowning. His frown only deepened as he studied the list, indicating that this final member would either drive Team 7 apart or unite them. "Yes!" Haruka was beginning to worry about Ndo since he had never acted in such a manner before. He used to admire Sakura, but now he was acting as though she had a rare illness. Sakura gasped with glee as Ndo and his companion slammed their heads on their desks simultaneously. Minato tried to cheer up his son by saying, "Come on No, it won't be that bad," but it didn't work. Instead, No ignored the other team placements and concentrated on his own inner issues. He made sure his friend was in the middle, behind the Berlin Wall that separated him from the pink-haired banshee. Fox Beast's sensitive ears caused him to complain that he didn't like the pink-haired woman at all. "Stop trying to bullshit him, Minato, that pink-haired howler monkey needs to get her vocal cords clipped," No sighed in defeat. Maybe this was his way of getting even with him or something. No only realized that Sakura was most likely the reason this team wouldn't succeed.